Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. You know, Jerri, I think about when we started our podcast 3.5 years ago and all of the different things that we had to think about. We had to think about what our mission was, why we were doing this. We had to think about topics and guests and equipment and our name, what our name would be, and our branding. I mean, there was just so much to consider. So I think what's really cool, though, is that people are getting some lessons in school on this because there is a big trend, and we've had a couple student podcasters on before, but there is a big trend in student podcasting. And so we're going to be talking about that today. I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. Jamie, I will honestly say I looked forward to this podcast more than and I love podcasting, but I was really looking forward to this one because anytime it is students, kids are my favorite people in the world. I mean, let's face it, kids are great. And you and I were both middle school teachers, and we both have a real soft spot for kids. So today we have with us three young ladies that are podcasters. And I am going to ask each of the young ladies to introduce themselves, first names only, and then we're going to start asking you a few questions. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I'm Anna, and we're all in 7th grade.
All right.
I'm Ava.
All right. Excellent. So we have Anna, Bella, and Ava. And we understand your superintendent is so proud of you. He told us that you have a podcast, and the three of you came together to create this podcast. So we were talking just a little bit before the show, and Jamie said her first question is, why did you want to have a podcast? So I just stole that question from Jamie. And tell us, why did you want to have a podcast?
Well, it wasn't really on our agenda. It was kind of unexpected because our school just got this new equipment, and it was a bunch of microphones, and we were all like putting the headphones on, trying it out, and it was just so cool. And Miss Grimley put on our Brigantine School News that she wanted new students to come and try out the podcasting, and it was a podcast meeting, so if you wanted to try and make one, then you can come to the meeting. So me and all my friends, we went there, and she was like, what are some topics you want to talk about? And we were all talking with each other, and we were like, women empowerment. And
Oh, love it.
I raised my hand and I was like, women empowerment, let's talk about that. And then Miss Gilman, everyone was so excited that we wanted to talk about that. So that's basically how we got started.
So what is the name of the podcast?
Our podcast name is Power Up Podcast.
Power Up Podcast.
Yes.
Fabulous. So it sounds like you already had the equipment. So that's great. What were the next steps in getting started? I mean, now you came up with a theme, which is really hard to do. It sounds like you guys did that pretty nicely. But what were the next steps?
The next steps were creating a Spotify account so
Okay.
that we could upload the episodes that we made, and then coming up with ideas was also a part of it before we just started talking and something that we wanted to talk about for our first episode. And then just figuring out how to use the editing system and put up our episodes onto Spotify.
The machine that we use, it's really, really complicated, but Ava actually learned it really quickly and she got it. And also one of the hardest things was probably picking out the name of the podcast.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. What was Powered Up? What does that signify for you?
Power up your confidence with Power Up Podcast.
Oh, I love it. Power up your confidence. So did your teachers allow you to do all this work, like set up the Spotify, generate the ideas, or did they do the work for you?
They were really helpful with it. We did it ourselves, but our
Mr. Nick.
yeah, Mr. Nick, he does all the electronics, and he helped us a lot. Miss Grimley helped us so much, and so did Mr. Robbins.
That's great. So you all took control, but you had a lot of support.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, love it.
wonderful.
You know what I love about that is that, Jerri, you and I, we have Marvin, who's our wonderful producer. So we don't get into all of the tech stuff.
Right.
The three of you are really doing almost all aspects of it. So that's pretty fantastic. Is there any particular role that you each take on when putting this podcast together? Is there, and you mentioned that Ava's really good with the editing. Do you have any particular roles?
She's definitely the editor, and we kind of all come up with ideas together because all of our parents are really into it too. Like, they love that we do this, so they always give us ideas as well.
Very good. Well, speaking of ideas, what are some of the ideas that you've come up with?
Some of the ideas that we've come up with is trying to, like, I know we had one for New Year's, and that was a topic that we talked about, which was basically like goals that you have for yourself or ways to be more confident in the new year. And then some other ones, we just talk about things that like people struggle with.
Right. And you said one of those things is confidence?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for people to help them be more confident? Have you heard anything you could share with us?
For us, it was mostly just that we knew a lot of people or some of our friends that didn't really feel confident in the things that they were doing, and we didn't want everyone to feel that way. And our moms they always help us like be confident or be supportive in what we're doing. And Anna said in one of our episodes that not everyone has that mom like the rest of us do. So we just wanted to have the give other people confidence. But one of the tips was just being yourself, being happy with who you are, and not trying to change for anyone else.
Yeah, and I know I always talk about my mom, we always do, but my mom always tells me home team advantage, like you have to cheer for yourself. So definitely start like being okay with yourself and loving yourself first before taking any big steps.
Oh, I love that. Sounds like you have some pretty smart moms.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we always have guests on our podcast, but it seems the three of you really handle all of the content, right?
Well, we actually most of our episodes we have guests, and Mr. Robbins finds them for us, and he sets them up just like this, and then we're able to just free talk with them. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Are most of them people your age or older?
Most of them are like people that are older than us or like leaders that he finds or people he's done like conferences with.
Yeah, people he's worked with and that he knows.
Oh, that's great. So you get to learn some lessons along the way from your guests as well, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, I was wondering, once you got the podcast set up, do you do this during school in a class, or when do you record your podcasts?
So our day is kind of like we have a whole schedule, but we have lunch
Sure.
and then we have recess, but we also call it buck time. So our mascot is a buccaneer, so we just call it buck time. And you can go upstairs and work with Miss Grimley, who is our digital arts teacher. And there's always people working on segments and new things they want to put on the news. So we just go up and go into our new podcast room, and we'll type up on the computer, we'll find out ideas, and that's just how we do it.
Oh, that is fantastic. Now, you said that the podcast is about women empowerment. Is this podcast for girls, women only?
Not really. I mean, anyone can take the advice that we have, but we felt like women empowerment wasn't talked about enough, so that's why we decided to choose the topic of women empowerment.
Yeah, it's definitely like shifted towards women, but we like my dad listens to the podcast, their dad listens, Mr. Robbins listens, like a lot of guys listen too.
Sure, I bet they do, because really we all need help with feeling good about ourselves and self-esteem and some of the issues that you're talking about. You know, I've been away from schools for a little while, And I am just wondering, what are some of the issues that people your age are facing? It doesn't have to be people in your school, but what do you think are some of the toughest issues out there now that kids face?
I think struggles that kids face now is definitely other people putting them down, or just like I know there's a lot of social media now, and they see things that they like want to work towards, but they know that they like can't always just like have it right away. So I think it's mostly just like I feel like it's like something that people like want, or like the kids like they struggle with like wanting things, or like being like put down by like certain things they see.
Just not
Mhm.
being okay in your own skin. And I know this is kind of a weird analogy, but think about it like, when you swim up from the bottom of a pool,
Yes.
it's much harder to do it if you have like weights. And we did that at this thing we went to, the lifeguard training, and we have to swim up with the weight. And I think that the top of the pool is like your goals, and you start at the bottom, and having the people just bring you down, it just makes
It's
it
like
10
another
times
weight.
harder. Like,
Oh, I love that analogy. That's fantastic. So you're trying to lift some of those weights off of people
yeah.
so that they don't have all of that on them. Oh, that is fantastic. How many episodes have you done so far?
We have had 7 episodes, one of them being an interview, or 3 of them being an interview, and then one was introducing ourselves, and the other 3 were just us trying to like explain and give advice on how to empower yourself.
We had talked about your guests. I wonder if other kids from other schools were thinking about having a podcast. Do you have any advice, some do's and don'ts, or some of the things you wish you had done differently?
I wish for our first episode we would have just free talked. We were so stressed out trying to come up with like
A
almost a
topic.
line and a topic. It was just really hard to start. I feel like we could have done so much more research on it and really educated ourselves just a little bit more, but I'm really proud of where we've come.
Yes. Does that mean that you do more research now before you talk to people?
I've We've learned to like feel comfortable with ourselves talking, and I know that's probably like a struggle for some people, because I know people
Right.
don't like hearing themselves talk, or like like don't want other people listening to how they're like talking.
Sure.
And one of our guests that we've had, her name was Courtney Orzel, and she had us on her podcast, and she was talking about imposter syndrome and how
Mm.
and how everyone struggles with it, and once you like overcome it, it's much easier. So I was listening back to our podcast, like they would put it on the news, and I'd be like, no, I have to go to the bathroom, I can't listen to us on
Yeah.
the big screen in front of all my classmates. And once I learned to just be okay with it, it really helped.
Oh, that's great. There's movie stars that can't watch themselves in shows.
Yeah.
So
It's
you're in
weird.
good
It's weird.
company.
It's funny because I'm a podcaster and I hate my voice, so it's kind of ironic, right? It's
I
hard. It's hard. So I think Jerry kind of asked this a little bit, but if you were to give 3 tips for other students who wanted to start this podcast, what would they be?
Definitely research, and then also just being comfortable with what you want to say and just saying what you want to say instead of thinking, well, what if this sounds in the wrong way, or what if someone takes it in the wrong way, because
Mm.
you know what you meant.
Oh, sure.
And a quote that like my family and my brother always says to me, it's like, one day or day one. So are you gonna just say one day I'll do it? Is this gonna be the first day that you do it? So
Ah,
Oh, I
instead
love
of
that.
I
in,
do too.
instead of just pushing it off, just get it done so we can have a podcast to come next.
Love it. Love it.
A tip that I have is definitely like just being sure with yourself, and like try to prepare yourself and be ready and listen to other podcasts before you start, because I know
Mm.
we didn't listen to that many things, so we didn't know what other people talk about, or like just to like free talk instead of having like a script, like kind of how we did.
Oh, Jamie and I went through the same thing. We had this script when we started, and our producer said, "Don't do that," but we secretly did it.
Did it
And
anyway? Yeah.
and we found out that was the worst thing to do because it doesn't seem authentic, right? Because you're just
Right.
reading this
Like,
script the whole time.
One of
but
our classmates were like, "You guys sound like
yeah,
robots."
That is true. We went through that same exact thing. Um,
Lessons learned.
yes, I wanted to ask you, this whole process has involved so many things, research, technology, speaking, writing. Has it opened your eyes to any potential career you may want to do in the future?
I've always wanted to be some kind of psychologist, and I feel like this is just like a great way to start.
Talking to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic.
I feel um like learning to like listen to my own voice and like get my own voice really like made me like want to like talk to people more. And I've always wanted to be since I was little like to design things like an interior designer or something. So I think
Right.
being on the podcast will help me talk to people or adults and like mature more in the future.
I think so too.
For me, I don't really think I want to stay with podcasting forever, but being able to talk to other people or just say what I'm thinking about is probably a good thing for like people skills and things like that. So podcasting has definitely helped.
Right. It's been a great experience, I bet. And it's real world. And you're not just reading about how to podcast out of a book. I love that.
The real world. It really makes a difference when you're
Right.
actually doing it. Yep.
And we hear things about your superintendent that he's doing innovative things. And this really shows your school promotes this kind of thing, right? To have you all be creators and do
Yes.
some interesting things.
Our digital arts program is definitely a big part of like showing who you are because anyone that wants so we have a brigantine news that we put on every day, and every Friday there's like certain segments that they put on, and if you want to have a segment, Miss Grimley will always let you come in and do a segment on whatever you want to do, just as long as it's school appropriate.
Sure. That's
So great.
wonderful. I'm
I just
glad you're in an environment like that. You're very lucky. Not all students get that kind of environment, but do you feel like you learn more from something like this maybe than from a book, or is it
Yes.
about the same?
Yes,
Yeah,
I feel like we get so many more opportunities being like to get our voices really out there. And when when Mr. Robbins helps us get interviews and stuff, I feel like there's like it opens us up to so much more opportunities to like meet new people and talk to people and learn new lessons.
And
Yes.
I'm like a type of person who can't really just look at a book for that long. Like I
Mhm.
have to be doing one-on-one and talking to people like this, doing the podcast and learning new things every time I speak to someone. It's just so much easier and better. And it really
Yeah.
sticks in my head.
Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
see that you're the one that said one day or day one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to put that sticky note on my computer. I love that. That's great.
I think definitely this is helping me better than a book because I get to hear what other people are thinking that maybe don't want to write a book or something that hasn't been said before that I probably need to hear.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
Such a great experience that you three have because not only are you learning as part of this process, but also you're sharing some great wisdom with others as well. So it's a win win for everyone. So I think it's just fantastic. I think, podcasting, as I mentioned, is becoming a trend in schools. And I think it's really important for you to have educators like you have to be able to promote that and let it grow. And you're lucky. So many other schools are either doing this or hoping to learn from all of you to do it for themselves. So wonderful.
Yes. Now, if we wanted to listen to your podcast, how would we find it?
You can find it on Spotify by looking up Power Up Podcast, and then
if it doesn't come up, you can search up Power Up Podcast Brigantine Schools, and then it will come up. It's a pink background, and it says Anna, Ava, and Bella on it.
A pink background and Brigantine Schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds great because I am going to look it up. I did listen to a couple of your podcasts and I thought they were terrific. Terrific. Yes. Well, ladies, we are so happy to have had you on the podcast today. And is school out yet?
Yeah.
Yes. So we're after school. So we probably need to let you go get to basketball practice.
The season just ended, so.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and we will definitely look it up online and listen in.
Thank you so much for having us.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify, and subscribe to us on YouTube.